Hi, my name is Greg Corcoran. I'm the manager of JEA's Project Outreach Team, and I'm here with Russ Durham and John Coursey to talk a little bit about the US1 Phillips Highway to Racetrack Road Electric Reliability Project. How you doing, gentlemen?
Doing good.
Thank you for joining us in this video today to talk about the project. Can you briefly introduce yourself and explain what it is you do for JEA?
My name is Russell Durham. I'm the manager of electric transmission and distribution planning. We basically try to plan ahead 10 years out, trying to forecast new growth, new customers, and make sure we have the infrastructure in place to serve existing as well as the new customers that show up.
I'm John Coursey, Director of Energy Planning at JEA, and we look at distribution, transmission, and generation planning.
Okay, great. Sounds like you guys have very important jobs here. So when we have the right people to ask the right questions to. So I'm going to go through a couple of questions that we've received from many of our customers that live in the area and that are interested in this project, and I thought that you guys would be the perfect people to do that. So can you give us a general overview of this project and give us an idea of why it's needed for JEA and our customers?
Well, as you're aware, the southeast portion of Jacksonville and the southeast portion of our electric service territory is a very quickly growing area. This project is needed to serve our existing customers like those in Bartram Springs, as well as the new growth that's coming to the area. Our job is to be able to forecast this growth and get the infrastructure in place in time so we can reliably serve all of our existing and new customers.
Okay, so I do know there is a lot of growth in that area, a lot of building, so out there by Bartram substation and also out by Bartram Crossing. So this substation and this circuit will benefit all of those areas?
Yes, this area, we picked a substation location that is close to the customer growth, existing and new. These are new areas, 10, 12, 15 years ago, these are trees. So we're trying to get the services in place to reliably serve the customers. If we can put the substation near where the customers are, it increases their reliability with shorter circuits, ability to back them up in case an outage does occur. So this is a prime location to get the new services in place.
Okay, well that makes sense. Can we give kind of like a general overview of the project and how it's set up and why you decided to go this particular route? We can talk a little bit later about different routes that we looked at, but let's talk about this current route and why this makes the most sense.
Well, the Nocatee substation is right here, and as Russ mentioned, that substation will serve this area when it's put in service and in future growth area in here in Nocatee.
Okay, so that substation has not been built yet?
Correct, it's not been built. Now, every substation has to have a source. It has to have power. So we will energize this at 230 kV, and the source will be Greenland Energy Center. We come down here and go back around here to the Bartram substation. Two sources, one for each side. And we build all of our substations that way. In the event something happens to one of the sources, the other source will continue to be able to serve the load. It's an N-1 in planning lingo. And also, if you have maintenance issues, you may need to take one side out to do a repair. You can get one side out, get it scheduled, and then you've got the other side to continue service while you do that work.
Okay, so that sounds like a contingency plan to me, a backup plan. So if anything happens, you've got something else that you can rely on. Does that kind of make sense?
That's it.
Okay, and the Greenland Energy Center, that's the source, that's where we're generating the power. So it comes out of there, then goes to the different substations, which then goes out to the neighborhoods. Is that kind of how it works?
That's it.
Okay, and right now, is this area currently served without that substation?
Right now, Bartram substation is carrying the load and serving all of this, and it will also serve some of this load here. So what the Nocatee substation will do is going to provide closest service for Bartram Springs. In doing so, will offload Bartram substation, and it will be able to then serve some of the load that's growing down in here.
Okay, so it looks like a benefit for everybody, a win for everybody.
Yeah.
So what would happen if we were to have some sort of catastrophic incident along the existing transmission right away that serves Bartram Springs?
Right now, if this transmission line went out, this substation would be out from this source, but we do have a connection going from here to Switzerland, and then from Switzerland down to Sampson substation, which is an FPL substation. Unfortunately, it's a rather weak tie. So depending on the time of the year, it may not be able to serve a load. So you would not have 100% reliable backup off of Bartram. That's one of the other things that this line will do is it will come down through here. It'll also beef this up. If you lose this, we won't be dependent on this weak tie to FPL any longer.
And I'm sure that JEA as a utility would like to service its own utility
Exactly.
area. So that makes sense for us as well. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So we've had some discussions, and I've had some phone calls and emails from customers, and so I think that I have an idea of some of the areas that they were asking, why didn't we go this way? So we're going to talk a little bit about some different routes that others have asked us about. And if you could kind of tell us why. So if you could start with the existing transmission corridor, why would you not just want to build another circuit down that existing transmission corridor?
Two issues with this. The first is the existing transmission line. It's what we call an H-frame construction. It's two poles, 30, 40 feet apart, and then a crossbar across the top, and then the conductors are arranged very wide. It takes up a big part of the right-of-way. There's not enough room to build a second transmission line with the original circuit in that configuration I just described. So the original circuit coming all the way down here would have to be rebuilt to monopole, which is single pole type construction, which by the way is the type of construction we're proposing here. And then a second line built. A lot of the area is kind of swampy. You'd have to mat in. So it would be quite a bit more expensive to try to make this work. And when you got done, when you tied this through, you still only have one source to Nocatee substation. You'd have to get back up here.
Okay, so it's a little bit like putting all your eggs in one basket. So you're certainly just having, building another circuit where the same circuit is, you're not really diversifying where your route is.
Right. We need a diverse geographic path to ensure the maximum reliability for the substation. As a matter of fact, in NERC planning, they have a thing called a C5, which is a quarter outage when you have one event that takes everything out. And if that was the case, you'd be in trouble. But with this line built here, you'd be insulated from that for this substation and for Bartram substation. So there's a lot of benefits to this whole area by getting this looped in the way that we're planning to do it.
So essentially what you were saying in engineering lingo was that you'll be able to provide maintenance to that line by having another circuit.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we've talked about that one. That obviously isn't something that looks like it would work as far as what we need for reliability purposes. Some people have talked about, why didn't we just go down 9B, State Road 9B? Why isn't that an option for us?
Well, 9B is a interstate type highway, and we are not allowed to build within the right of way under any conditions at all. We're allowed to cross it, but we can't build within it, parallel. And if we got into trying to acquire property next to it, we'd be looking at probably condemning houses and tearing them down to try to get a 100, 150 foot swath of right of way. So, we got to looking at that. It just didn't make sense.
Okay, so that pretty quickly was something that we decided just wasn't something.
And then you still got the issue, you got to get from that location back to Nocatee substation as well.
Right, so you still have to go down State Road 9B, somehow go down 95, and you'd still need to go down Racetrack. So kind of to summarize that area is, Florida Department of Transportation wouldn't allow us in their right-of-way. If we have to go outside of the right-of-way, we would be purchasing right-of-way, which on one side, we basically have Bartram Springs subdivision again, with no tree buffer. And on the opposite side, we have additional properties. And with any type of property acquisition, there are high costs involved with that. Even if that was something that we were able to do, even if that was something that was good for our system. So we've kind of ruled that out. So we ruled out the existing transmission line, the State Road 9B. Now one of the questions I'm getting is, why don't we just go on the opposite side of the road? I know currently we're planning on going on the side of the road where the railroad tracks are, between the railroad tracks and the road. Why aren't we on the opposite side of the road where there's existing distribution lines?
Well, one of the issues with the east side of Phillips Highway is the fact that there are a lot of utilities already within the right of way. And we looked at that, and there's not enough area in that right of way for us to build a transmission line and have the clearances that we need to have to satisfy the various codes. So what would happen, we'd wind up having to actually acquire additional real estate to get an easement, and we'd be dealing with multiple property owners. And normally in situations like that, you may wind up with some of them that don't want to deal with you and others that do. And if you don't have it all, you really, you can't build a line.
So let's just say that we have 30 property owners and you just have one that doesn't want to sell their property to JEA. That can be a problem for the whole project, correct?
Very well. And what our real estate people tell us in situations like that, where you have a perfectly good alternative on the other side of the road that's a utility type corridor, railroad track and other utilities, that the question will be asked, why don't you just go over there? So there may be some difficulty in actually getting that one guy that doesn't want to sell, taking his property. Okay,
so we do build normally within right-of-ways, which is utility right-of-ways where utilities are supposed to go. So what you're saying is that there's existing utilities or future utilities that are within that right-of-way currently. So there's not a lot of room there. And then we've got where our distribution lines, but transmission lines need more room. They need more room for what reasons?
Well, one of them is blowout, and what that does, it takes into account the fact that the conductors will swing when the wind blows. So there's a lot more involved than just the physical at rest position of the conductors. So even though when you put the pole at the back edge of the right-of-way, you've got to go back on the other side and acquire an easement to cover that conductor when it blows over.
Okay, and the requirement is much different from a smaller distribution pole to a larger transmission
pole.
pole.
Clearances are much more for transmission.
Okay, so that makes sense. So in that case, JEA would need to get its real estate department to go in and start talking to people acquiring all those easements along there. Right. So on the opposite side of the road, from what you know, what was that acquisition like? Were there the same amount of property owners on this side that they were dealing with?
No, on the west side, the main property owner obviously was FEC Railroad, and there were a couple of others. I think probably 3, somewhere along in that area.
So 3 as opposed to somewhere from 30 to 40,
right.
Something like that. Okay, so it's a lot easier to deal with that amount of people. The cost is substantially lower. And certainly, so we've kind of talked about why that side doesn't work. Now let's talk about why, from an engineering perspective, that this is the best route on the opposite side of the road. We've talked a little bit about property acquisition. So that's one, right? You're dealing with 3 property owners, a willing property owner. It doesn't look like that area is somewhere that could really be anything really built on it other than an additional railroad track as opposed to the other side, right, where you might be able to build more?
This is correct. Over on the east side, it is possible, for plans, and there may be some plans in place for future development. And the process of acquiring additional right-of-way for blowout and clearances could impact those plans. While on the west side, it's an industrial type easement with the railroad, nothing's going to go in there. So when we build that, it's going to be just like that. And
it's long and thin. It's a perfect corridor for a new transmission line.
So it seems like, this seems like an area that would be ideal from an engineering and planning perspective when you've got a transportation and utility corridor, which is what we've got here. We've got a railroad, and then we've got between a railroad and a road. That's where you put things like utilities. Isn't that pretty common?
That's common. It's really a perfect solution to try to get the power down and get Nocatee substation looped in and improve the overall integrity and reliability of service for customers in that area.
And certainly looking at that area as well, constructability, there's not a problem with constructability, how we construct it. And then as far as maintenance, we're right off a major road, right? So we're able to quickly access these areas and be able to maintain the lines. So that would seem to make sense as far from an engineering perspective, right?
Correct. An operations perspective as well.
Because it's not just the building of the line, but it's the maintaining of the line for the future.
So it's not just the installation or what it looks like. We need to worry about, how we handle these power lines and how we maintain them in the future. Exactly. Okay, is there anything else that you'd like our customers to know about the project, or?
I'd just say we've been planning this project for a number of years, and when we get it complete, there will be an improvement to the service, more reliable service, and for contingency situations, they'll be able to have better power, more reliable power than without this.
Okay, great. Well, we appreciate your time today, and we appreciate what you do. Thank you very much.